The following episode contains mature themes and strong language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello. Welcome back to History and Mystery in Kansas City, the history podcast about all things unsolved and unexplained in Kansas City and the surrounding areas. Thomas and I are back for the second part of Mystery in Room 1046.
That was a doozy.
Yes.
And I've got some thoughts.
I have many thoughts. This is going to be a really long one, so strap in because we are going to be here a while. Before we get into theories about what happened to Artemis, I want to talk about an active missing persons case.
Okay.
His name is Tamontez Hurt. He's a 19-year-old African-American man who was last seen February 1st, 2024, so this year.
So this is recent.
Very recent.
Okay.
He is originally from St. Louis, and he had been attending Missouri Western State University in St. Joseph, Missouri. On the morning of February 1st, Tamontez is with a female friend and calls his grandmother, Takona. He's in a panic, and he calls her acting strange and acting scared. She said she overheard him ask a woman, who later said her name was Naya, that she heard him ask her, "What did you do to me? And what did you give me?" He was so scared, and he asked his grandmother to pray with him. Takona calls the police, who are able to pick up Tamontez around the 3900 block of Baltimore and bring him to St. Luke's Hospital. Takona is still on the phone with him at this point and says Tamontez is talking about God, being forgiven, and, quote, "I am born again and I am going to glory," end quote. Takona is begging the nurses to run tests on him in case whatever he ingested was laced with something, but the hospital told her that they didn't find anything in his urine sample, so they just discharged him.
That's insane.
Yeah, when you're acting that crazy.
Yeah, there's other tests that they could have done.
Right. Takona's begging them not to release him, and she's in St. Louis, so she's like 4 hours away.
Right.
But she's like, "Please don't release him. I will come get him." But they refuse. They're just like, "There's nothing here. We're going to release him." She begs the nurses to give him at least a cab voucher so that he can go to the bus stop. And she plans to buy him a ticket so when he gets there, he can just go back home.
Right.
So they do that. They give him a cab voucher, and he goes to the Greyhound bus station, and she briefly hangs up the phone with him so she can buy the bus ticket. He arrives at the bus station around 11:53 a.m., gets out of the taxi, which was a Z-Trip, and he walks over to go inside, but the doors to the bus station are locked. So he heads back to the taxi where his cell phone is still inside, because
he's not in it. He's not
in his right state of mind.
Right.
But the driver won't let him back inside to get his phone, and he drives off. And this is all on security. You can see it.
Why would the driver not at least be like, "Okay, well, let me grab your phone. Let me give you your phone."
Yeah.
Like, I can understand if he was out of his mind and the driver's like, "I don't feel safe with you in my car." But at the least point, he could have been like, "Let me crack the window. Give me your phone."
The only thing I can think of is that he didn't realize his phone was back there, and Tamontez is just not making any sense, and so he's just like, "Whatever, this dude's crazy," and drives off. I don't know.
That's a possibility.
So then Tamontez just starts walking south. He was picked up by traffic cameras walking in the area of 77th and Troost and has not been seen since.
Troost.
Yeah. And that's not a good area. 77th and Troost is really not a good area.
Just Troost in general is not a good area.
Takona, the grandmother, came to Kansas City, and she's been out looking for him, passing out flyers and just looking everywhere.
What was the date on this?
February.
So it's about a month and a half, almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, Wow.
And his grandmother says, quote, "I'm all the way from St. Louis and I'm asking you for help in your city. I've got posters all down Troost. I'm going all around everywhere looking for my grandbaby," end quote. She isn't sure if he was having a mental health crisis or was giving something, but she says he does not act like this normally and something is definitely wrong. And he would have reached out to family by now if he could have. So please help this family and share what you know. If you have any information, call the Missouri State Highway Patrol at 866-362-6422 or Kansas City Police Department Missing Persons Unit at 816-234-5043. Or you can email missingpersons at mshp.d like David, P like Paul S. .mo.gov. That's a long one. I will post it, all that information on the Facebook, so you can just click on it.
Let's definitely help her find her grandson. This I mean, just from the sound of it, of the whole like, what did you give me? What did you do to me? Like, and I'm a little ashamed with. I mean, the American healthcare system in general kind of sucks, but for them only to do a urine sample, especially if he's acting very off, very bizarre, and the grandma's like, "Look, do other tests."
Yeah.
Like,
just let him go, even if he's acting crazy.
Yeah, you can't. Like, that's not doing a service to the individual. That's not doing a service. Like, you took an oath to protect and help people. Like,
yeah. She is very worried, and
they could have done a hair sample. They could have done blood samples.
Yeah.
Toxicology levels. Like, there's a ton they could have done. Like,
yeah.
Because if it's lead poisoning, that could be a wonky, like, change your mindset. I mean, especially if this is possibly not the first time that because I doubt that he would take something or from a first interaction with this individual. This has to have been an individual that I'm going on a tangent here.
Out with before.
Yeah, like, so I mean, let's definitely help bring this guy home.
Yeah,
and get him safe.
Yeah. So on to the second part of the first thing I need to say is I do need to make a couple corrections. So I said in the first episode that it was during Prohibition, but Prohibition actually ended in 1933, so this was 2 years after that.
Oh, okay.
And secondly, the clothing that Owen was wearing when he checked in was missing from the room. I did verify that.
Oh, it was missing.
It was missing, so there was
so he was
nothing.
Buck naked, and they took his towels.
Yes, and his room key with him locked from the inside.
Oh, that's incredibly rude.
Yes. So just to recap, a man going by the name Roland T. Owen was found brutally tortured and murdered in his hotel room. 2 years later, we find out his real name is Artemis Ogletree.
Artemis.
Who was, according to Casey Mag, only 19 years old. There were really no clues left behind that helped identify his killer. The corrupt police department thinks the killer is Joseph Ogden because he used an alias of Donald Kelso. Artemis did receive a phone call in his room from a person he called Don and stayed at another hotel with a Don Kelso. So that's where we pretty much left off last time.
The name of Kelso is ruined for me because of that 70s show. So every time I hear Kelso, my brain's just like, okay.
So I wanted to go over his wounds again and what was left in the room.
All right,
just to remind everybody.
Do this. Do it. Because there were no clothes. We know that. There are no towels.
No. So for his wounds, a clothesline had been tied around his neck, ankles, and wrists. He had been stabbed in the chest multiple times. His lung was punctured. His skull was fractured by at least 3 blows to the head. And what was left in the room was, according to the KCPD, all of the man's clothing and all other belongings were missing from the room, save a label torn from a cheap necktie. And then from kchistory.org, besides the label, which showed the tie originated from the Botany Worsted Mills Company of, I'm not sure how to say this, Passaic, New Jersey, the only items found were a hairpin, a safety pin, an unlit cigarette, and a small unused bottle of dilute sulfuric acid.
Sulfuric acid.
And that's the one that we were like, what on earth would that be used for?
Yeah.
But I was doing reading and found out that it could just be for cleaning. It could have been
Like an old school cleaning.
old school cleaning product, and or potentially was brought by the killer to wipe the fingerprints, since they didn't really find any fingerprints in there except for 4.
Right. But the question comes into play, though, because if they tried to kill him, they would have just killed him. He was alive when they got there.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to bleed out, die later.
So they probably didn't bring a cleaner to wipe prints if they were just going to beat him up.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they thought he died.
Yeah. And they're like, oh shit, let me grab this bottle out of my pocket and wipe stuff down really quick.
It's possible. I mean, they took everything else. Although you would think if you're going to clean to make sure no one gets any clues of who murdered this person, you would take the cleaning product with you.
Right. Or it could have just been left by a previous tenant or
even the cleaning
a
stuff.
maid.
Yeah.
Who knows? I did also read, I thought it was interesting, from an article on, it's the National Library of Medicine, that sulfuric acid can be used in making cocaine. The sulfuric acid is often used to dissolve the coca paste. It's a chunky off-white to light brown putty-like substance.
So they could have been making cocaine.
Yeah, could be some straight-up drug dealers that murdered him and it fell out of their pocket and they didn't realize it.
I mean, it's possible.
But it was a pretty, from what
There was that party that was just down the hall that had all those drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, could have been someone from that too.
Yeah. According to Fox 4, in 2003, Dr. John Horner wrote a lengthy account of the murder case published by the Kansas City Public Library. He received an out-of-state call about Artemis Ogletree.
An out-of-state call?
Yes, in 2003.
In 2003. So this is like 70 years.
Yes, because he published this article and somebody read it, and then they called and said that they found a box with newspaper articles about the Ogletree murder, and it was found in a deceased elderly person's belongings. The caller said there was also an item found in the box, and the articles back in the day referred to this item several times, but the caller did not specify what the item was.
Huh.
So it could have been the room key or something of Artemis's.
You would have, that just adds to the mystery.
I know.
Who was this caller?
And it's frustrating. They apparently they changed their mind and then didn't want to spill anything, and so they hung up, and we don't know anything else. But if that's true, it could have belonged to Don. Maybe he passed away.
Well, if it was Don's, did he die in jail?
I could not verify that. I looked it up. I really tried to find what happened to him, but he was only sentenced to 20 years, though I doubt it.
So, yeah, unless he was shanked in
Yeah, who knows?
jail.
I could not find anything about his death because we still don't know if that's his real. We don't know
We don't
real
know if that's
name.
his real name, or if he changed it after he got out of jail.
Exactly. So it could have
Because
been.
that would have been the 50s when he came out of jail.
Yeah. If he even served the whole thing, they might have let him out for good behavior. You know.
No one gets out for good behavior.
If it was Don's, in 2003, he would have been 103. So he could have died,
Could have even been
previous 10 years or
Yeah.
whatever.
Could have even been his kid. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or his grandkid.
Or it could have been Joe Simpson, who would have been maybe 90 at the time or so.
Which one's Joe Simpson?
Joe Simpson is the friend that left with Artemis hitchhiking.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he's the one that his mother, Artemis's mother, is real suspicious of. She says that she doesn't believe he did it, but that he knows more.
I probably agree.
I totally agree with that.
He definitely knows more, but also his adventures didn't line up with the timeline.
What do you mean?
Because he was like, oh yeah, went hitchhiking with him, but then was like it didn't make sense where maybe I'm wrong.
What?
It just didn't feel like where they met up made sense.
Mm.
Because I think, didn't they say that they met up in like Albuquerque or Tucson or something?
Well, he claimed that he was pretending to be someone else and claims to have met him in Cairo.
That's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
that made sense.
But he didn't admit that that was him.
Wow.
But Ruby Ogletree says, I would recognize the voice that called me. And then he was like all nervous and shit. So we believe.
Cairo,
Yeah.
that's
So
that's what it was. I don't know why I was thinking Albuquerque. I was thinking U.S. No, it was. God, that's such a big.
Yeah.
We went hitchhiking and ended up in Cairo.
Yeah. I don't believe a word he says.
So even if he was telling the truth about certain things, you wouldn't you couldn't believe it.
Right.
You couldn't.
So with that, what are your theories?
You throw me a theory, I'll throw you a theory.
Okay, I have mine lined up from most ridiculous to most plausible in my mind.
Okay.
My first one, he was a spy. According to Casey Mag, a Seattle man claimed that the victim was his boyhood friend and that his father had been a high official in the German army, suggesting that the murder might be tied to spyware.
So he thinks that Artemis was a German spy?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, apparently a German spy. He worked for the German army. I don't know.
Wow. Could you imagine?
There is absolutely no...
I think if he were to be a spy, I think it would be a U.S. spy.
Yeah.
Because people are less likely to expect like a really young 19-year-old spy.
Yeah, it makes no sense. There's no evidence of that.
If Houdini can be a spy, I'm sure this guy could be a spy.
It is well documented in all of the police reports and witness testimony that his accent was a Southern boy accent.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have a German
Southern boy.
Yeah. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, I can honestly believe the spy thing now.
Oh,
and think about it.
ridiculous.
He's 001, or he's 019. He's only 19. I honestly think that Dawn and him were lovers.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing, because I mean, and I think somebody suspected it, and because of all the hate crimes towards people of that type, maybe a lady got jealous or something, but loved him,
Mm-hmm.
and their siblings found out and was like, "Oh, you ain't gonna treat my sister like this."
Yeah.
And so they went and they did it, and that's the reason why a woman called and paid, is because she's like, I didn't want him to die. I didn't want to. I just, I was upset that he was gay or something.
Right.
Like, we're talking the 1930s, mid to late 1930s.
Yeah.
It's very plausible that during that time period, if that secret had come out, that it could be, I mean, even in some places today, could be the cause of a death.
Yeah.
Or severe beating. And I think it's very possible that that was the case, and the whole thing with Dawn calling him, he was like, hey, like, can't right now, handling some shit.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I mean, that would also explain the whole I want to be bougie and live in that hotel that's $5 down the road, and he's upset that he has to pay the $2 down right here. He's like, this is the slums. I wanted the high life.
No, he was complaining that the Muehlebach was too expensive.
Right,
That's
what I'm
why he
saying.
came to the president. But, I mean, he didn't seem to hate being, well, he didn't have a good time there, but he didn't
He had a
complain.
blast. I don't know what you're talking about. It changed his life forever.
So I'll have to circle around back to your theory because,
Is that one of your things?
yeah, it's kind of one of
wow.
my theories, but I don't want to get out of order of my theories. But, yeah, mine are very similar to that. Theory 2, he was the victim of a hate crime for being gay, or someone thought he was gay.
Okay.
He could have just been bi and somebody,
He could have also just been femme.
yeah,
Like, not even like trans femme or anything, but just, he could have literally not have been just as masculine as what everybody else wanted.
right. But that kind of goes along with,
Yeah.
a hate crime. That would definitely be a hate crime if somebody,
Thought he was gay.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Hmm.
Have any more theories?
It was a lover's quarrel.
Mm-hmm.
Like going back to the whole, like, somebody was falling in love with him, because if you remember, there was in one of the notes it came out that, like, a woman paid for the thing, and then like somebody said that a woman was in love with him, and there was just a lover's spat.
Mhm.
I could see how that could be, where he got entangled with somebody else, and like his wife, because it could be a wife at that point, or even his girlfriend was like, yo, we ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And sent some people to teach him a lesson, to be like, maybe don't cheat on your significant other.
Yeah.
And they just took it too far. And the significant other, or the trio, the side chick, I guess, would have paid for everything. And I think genuinely the person who paid for his funeral, now that I'm thinking about it, it could have been the brother of the person that he fell in love with originally,
Mm-hmm.
because in the call it stated, hey, I want him to be buried next to my sister.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been that he cheated on his sister, and she killed herself, and the family was like, we're going to get you for this.
Yeah.
And it could be that too.
My theory number 3 is that he was killed by a sex maniac named Thomas Wilbur Barlow. Barlow had been convicted of, quote, crimes against nature in Little Blue, Missouri in 1940. And from what I found, crimes against nature is just like either a sex crime or exposing yourself or anything like sexually deviant.
Okay.
They thought he was good for it because the murder was, it seems very sexually motivated.
Right.
The arresting officers thought also that his signature looked like the signature of Donald Kelso in the hotel registry.
Huh.
He was questioned for 10 hours before, quote, giving several conflicting stories, end quote, and police eventually chalked up his confusion after 10 hours of questioning to syphilis. So he was never formally a suspect.
Oh. But yeah, I could definitely see how those could be sexual crimes against nature.
Yeah. Maybe he was like meeting Artemis there at the hotel as like, maybe, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but maybe Artemis was a male prostitute. And
That could be how he was funding his trip.
exactly. And he met this guy who went overboard and fucking killed him.
Well, to be fair, he didn't die. He just died from his wounds, and because he said no, right? He just died due to his wounds. He didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I could definitely see, man, a couple of these even could be.
I know. The crime to me doesn't seem very controlled. It doesn't seem very clean. Even though they took everything out, it seems like it could be just a crazy person who went too far. They started out in just some bondage situation and then it just got crazy.
Yeah.
And then he took all of the evidence because he didn't want to be outed as gay or
Yeah.
whatever. And then Artemis is like, nobody did this to me because he didn't want to be outed in case he lived.
In case, yeah, because he's like, I did this to myself.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he could have also been afraid of whoever his pimp was,
Exactly. Which might have been Don,
which might have been Don.
which is why he was locked in the room and could not leave.
Yeah, because
Don was making sure he met with his date.
he was locked from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Several times.
yeah. He's like, boy, you're gonna meet your date. No ifs, ands, or but about it. Well, I guess there is a but about it, but like, this guy's paying me some good cash to do crimes against nature,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to, what's the worst that can, you'll live through it.
Yeah.
It's probably exactly how that statement went. And then
It'll be fun.
there was that phone call with Don,
Mhm.
and he was like, that's when he was like, you're gonna live through it, right? And then he came over, locked the door from the outside, and then that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, except at some point, the door was locked from the inside.
Yes. That was after.
So how would they have gotten out? Did he lock it from the inside?
Whoever killed him would have had to have the key to get in, and what I was thinking is that it was one of those push locks. So they pushed it
And then left.
and then left. But I have some theories about that too.
All right.
Do you have anything else, Stat?
I thought I did, but now that with all these other things, I'm like, we're matching up. So
My theory number 4 is that he was a wrestler being controlled by, quote, Don, who may have been a mobster, potentially.
I forgot about the.
Yeah, the cauliflower ear. Maybe he fixed a fight or something went wrong, and the phone call to the funeral home by the unidentified man said cheaters get what's coming to them. It might not have been about a female. It might have been about throwing a fight or something like that.
Oh my dear.
And that would, maybe they instructed him to lose a fight and he refused, or whatever, vice versa. And that
I mean, especially because back then, boxing fights was a thing.
Yeah. And boxing was huge in the 30s. And Don could have just been controlling his fights. He might have been like his manager kind of person. And then that was his punishment for not doing what he wanted.
Was it he had to go and do that? That could be it. That could also be part of the reason why maybe he was just trying to say that he couldn't afford the $5 room, but that he actually could, but he was trying to hide and lay low.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, oh, I just can't, I hate the fact that I couldn't afford it. Oh my God, woe is me, trying to make it so that people are like, oh, okay, yeah. We get what you're saying. We understand, Roland, you just poor. And he's like, but I'm Artemis, I'm not poor, or I can do these things. Somebody else is paying for my room. And then Don found him and was like, hey, found you.
Yeah, because he was acting scared.
Yeah. He's like, we know where you are.
So he knew something was about to go down.
He knew.
Okay.
I honestly think that could have, man, there's so many different things that could have been too.
I know. So my theory 5 goes back to your theory about cheating on a girl. So maybe the girl was Louise, her brother was Don, and Don found out that Artemis was cheating on Louise and beat his ass. But I want to know, like, how serious is a 19-year-old boy in a relationship? Like, I guess back then it was a little bit different. Because back then it was like a lot of people were married by 17, 18.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of normal.
I also think, like, what if they just thought he was cheating
Yeah.
and he wasn't?
Yeah. Just perceived him.
Yeah, and he was he was a boxer, so he had to travel, and they're like,
And all these girls are probably coming up to him wanting his autograph. And
yeah. I mean, who knows?
yeah. One of the many sensationalized tips that came in was from a woman in LA, basically saying that he was caught up with a mobster's girl and something happened. He cheated, or he was perceived to be cheating, and a mobster had this done to him. So maybe Artemis was engaged to Louise, who was Don's sister. Don found out that Artemis was cheating, and Don was in the mob. And Don found out that he was cheating with maybe that commercial woman that came to the hotel. And Don and Louise met him in the room. But in my opinion, a brother protecting his sister's honor would have just shot the guy and left. Like, I don't understand why there would be this sexual tone to it.
Unless Don was his manager. I think, right, it could be a mixture of these things, right? I'm like building this thing. We're thinking too simply here. Okay, it's a mix of all of these. Not only, so he was hitchhiking, right?
Mhm.
Which is his friend, right? That's where he got his friend. But they were recruited by the United States military to be spies. Okay, and they're like, okay, but we need you to have an undercover alias. We're gonna teach you how to box.
Mhm.
So he became a boxer, and he fell in love with Louise, right? So he was like, all right, Louise, it's you and me against the world. Don was his manager, who worked for the mob, who he was trying to spy, they were trying to get information on the government.
Yeah.
And he was not only his agent, but he worked for the mob and was also a pimp.
Mm-hmm.
And so Artemis decided, hey, I'm not going to throw this match. I'm not going to, that's my honor, right? Phone call. Cheaters get what they get,
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, well, I don't want to die. So I need to stay at this other place.
Mm-hmm.
Lies about not being able to afford it. They find him, hence the phone call with Don. Don's like, hey, I got this guy. He's coming. You're gonna pay for cheating by doing this. And he's like, well, I really want to do that, but And he's like, hey, you'll make it through this alive. You'll be fine.
Mm.
So, in comes some other agents, right, to go and meet up with him to be like, hey, what's going on? And those are the two people that didn't stay there, that left the night at the party. And so then comes the deviant sex dude, the crime against nature's client, and he takes it way too far. And as they're going for it, the guy, a Don comes, locks up the door.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna stay with this with this client for a while, and then when he unlocks it, and at some point the client leaves, pushes the button on the way out.
Or Don comes back in to clean up and then locks it.
Yeah.
Has the key, maybe.
He's got the key, which is how he locked the door from the outside.
Yes.
And then he came back, cleaned it up, forgot the cleaning stuff, took all of his clothes and stuff, and was like, we ain't gonna, I guess you maybe ain't gonna make it out of this.
Yeah.
Dipped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was gonna leave him for dead. Oh my God. And he couldn't tell the cops what happened because not only was he a spy,
Yeah.
but it was gay.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't say anything because if he made it out of that, they'd see him as gay and kill him. But he was also a spy. And so the government's going to be like,
And the mafia.
and the mafia. He was doomed. And so maybe his agent friends were like, Luis, I'm sorry. And, we're going to pick up a little bit on the tabs that he can be next to you.
Yeah.
And
Near.
so they hear you. Yeah. And then next thing you know, he's buried here. His fees are covered. Luis goes to his funeral, and it's a sad ending for everyone. That's what happened to the T.
And then Louise puts it in her will that she wants to be buried in that cemetery when she passes many years later.
Yes.
So they're together forever.
That's that they're together forever. And their ghosts, chef's kiss, finally get to meet again in life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Very dramatic.
Very dramatic. But even hopefully in the afterlife, they finally get their happy ending.
Yes. Okay. So theory 7.
Okay. Let's see if we can incorporate this into our mega theory.
It kind of goes, but there's a new character in this one.
Ooh, okay.
He was just a gay man, scared of being outed, and he didn't want his identity to be known. So maybe he was killed by a lover, and I'm gonna just say that maybe it was Joe Simpson. So he and Joe Simpson ran off together from Birmingham, Alabama, going, let's go to California. Maybe they're
The Cairo guy?
Yes, the Cairo guy.
Oh, he was already in the story.
Right. He was already in it, but this is the first one with him in the theory.
Oh, no, he was the one that I was saying was the agent.
Oh.
His friend
Yeah.
that gets recruited.
Yeah.
Continue.
So they leave Alabama thinking we're going to have a better chance at living our, true selves in like California or wherever that we're heading. And so they run off together, and they knew that they needed to hide their sexuality for their own safety. So maybe Artemis and Simpson had a fight. It turned deadly. Artemis was seen in town with a couple females during his stay at the Hotel President. The police established that he was seen, quote, in certain liquor places on 12th Street in the company of 2 women, end quote. And that is in the police file. So maybe Joe Simpson found out about it and became super jealous. The night clerk, James Haddon, told police that he could track down the call girl as she regularly hung out around 12th and Baltimore, which is literally like a block and a half away from the hotel.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, the police did not pursue that lead at all.
Wow.
So
They gotten answers if they had done that.
yeah,
Although, one more word, corrupt,
yeah,
comes to mind.
exactly. They didn't want to, and at the time, they didn't care. It's like today with prostitutes. It's like we don't give a shit. It's degenerates is what they called them in the actual police file. Homosexuals were degenerates, and they didn't give a shit about their lives or their deaths.
Why would they?
Right. So in the police files, there's an acquaintance of the Ogletree family who said he briefly met up with Artemis in L.A. and he met 2 of the men that were going to Kansas City with Artemis. He said one of the men was 45 to 50 years old with sandy or graying hair. He asked Artemis what he'd been up to, and Artemis replied that he had been hanging out with a few, quote, unquote, queers, end quote. The torture was personal, and it had a sexual tone. This friend of the family sees him with 2 guys, so that could be Don and Joe Simpson, because the guy that was 45 to 50, Don wouldn't have been that old, but he was an older guy, way older than them, so it might have been him. So maybe it was a 3-way love triangle, too.
Which is why Don called him.
Yes. Don's definitely involved somehow.
Or there's a third Don, the one I'm thinking of. What do you call the mafia boss?
Yes.
A Don.
Don.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And there's so many things that you can come up with for this that would make so much sense.
Yeah.
Even the one that I was just piling everything together on, that's still, for that time period, can make
Plausible.
complete sense. It was pre-World War II, like just at the cusp of World War II. World War I had ended maybe 10 years prior to that. Yeah, the government's going to have some G-men going, we should check into some of these mafia here.
Yeah.
We should check into some of these groups possibly, or have these people learn these spy techniques so that we can send them overseas and do these other things.
Mm-hmm.
It's very plausible.
Mm-hmm.
That's the scary part.
So my last theory before I give my just final 2 cents
Okay.
is Ruby, which was Artemis's mother. She suspected Joe Simpson, and I don't think that a mother's intuition should be just ignored.
Right.
Even though we don't really have a lot of information about Joe and what happened. But Artemis and Joe had left together in 1934. Ruby finally confronted Simpson on December 28th, 1939, and became even more certain. Quote, "In talking with the boy, Joe Simpson, I was reasonably convinced that he is the person that talked to me from Memphis, Tennessee, 7 months after my son was killed," end quote. She wrote to KCPD detectives, and Ruby told them her conversation with Simpson as near word for word as she could remember.
Huh.
And that Simpson said he did believe that the case would never break, as there were no clues and left nothing for the G-men to work on. Ruby responded, "Kansas City can well boast of it being the perfect crime," end quote. He laughed and said, quote, "It is. They'll never get the ones who killed him," end quote. Ruby said she eventually looked Joe square in the eyes and told him, quote, "I would know the voice that talked to me from Memphis," end quote. He turned red, dropped his eyes, and was nervous. The conversation alone makes her very suspicious of Joe. If you had nothing to do with this, why on earth would you say something like that to a good friend's grieving mother? Also, the fact that he said there were no clues for the law enforcement to work with, and they would never catch the ones who did it. So he knows. He knows there's more than one person involved.
Well, I mean, if he is a spy,
Mm-hmm. Could be.
then he would know what the G-mans wouldn't and wouldn't find.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Especially if he was a spy undercover
Mhm.
to help the mafia
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
And so he had to do it. Like, I mean, we hear about these things about police being undercover and spies being undercover, right? And them having to do all these atrocious things to not only other police officers, but to other agents or agencies, just for them to conceal their identity. But yeah, I could definitely see him being the one that called in from Memphis, and then especially with his reaction, talking to her and going, "Oh, right, yeah, yeah." But maybe he's also just careless in the sense of he may have been one of the ones that murdered him,
Mm-hmm.
not working as a spy or whatever.
Yeah.
From jealousy or there being in debt or him having no choice or him just being upset at him. There's like, if you hate to say it, there's billions of reasons why anybody would kill another person.
Yeah.
Sadly, like, who knows what's going on in their minds when they go to do these things.
And Simpson was from the same town as the Ogletrees, and he knew where Ruby lived. So I feel like he's the one that was sending letters to Ruby.
Disguising themselves as Artemis.
Yes, describing, pretending to be Artemis, telling her that he was doing all these great things. And I think that he was just trying to give her false hope.
there's so much secrecy. Everyone's changing their names.
Yeah. Joe Simpson knows more than he's saying, and there's more than one person involved. I think Artemis was set up to get his ass beat, and he knew something was coming. He was scared. Maybe he broke some rules or thought he deserved to be punished for something he did. I don't think he knew he was going to die. And the perp left him alive. So even though there was not much evidence to go on, that tells me it was not a mob hit, because if they want you dead,
they would have just killed you.
You're dead. And it wouldn't have all the sexual overtones to it.
But I mean, you're not wrong.
Unless it involved the pimp kind of thing. Like,
and it just went overboard and they didn't intend for it to act like.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have to clarify something. As far as me just saying, like, all these people changing their names all the time, I can't really say anything. I've changed my name. This would, like, twice. So I can't really say anything on that front. Like, I get people don't want, like, sometimes you don't feel the same as your name. Sometimes you're just trying to hide yourself, you know? But at the same time, like, some of these people are going by 4 different names at the same time.
Yes. It makes it very confusing. And the fact that nobody had, like we have today, nobody had driver's license. So it was so hard to keep track of everybody. Like, that's why they couldn't even identify the man.
Right.
He didn't have anything on him.
You could just say, hey, this is who I am.
Yeah, you can travel without giving your real name. Like,
I'm sure that, though, during that time they had passports, didn't they?
Yeah, they had passports.
So I think that that would be like realistic only.
Yeah, if he went to Cairo and his mom dug into it, she called the embassy and everything, got the freaking president involved. She would have found it if he went to Cairo, and he did not. Yeah. Whoever was,
I would say that seemed like a stretch, especially for someone who's hitchhiking.
Yeah. I can't find anything that definitively says Joseph Ogden or Joseph Martin, who used the alias of Don Kelso, left Birmingham with the 2 younger boys. But I think there's too many coincidences for him not to be considered at all. Ogden's later victim, Cynical, who he confessed to killing, was someone he lived with, and he was found naked in a trunk that was to be shipped to Memphis, Tennessee, to someone named Joe Marshall. Could that be Simpson?
Maybe.
That's what I want to know. Cynical was also much younger than Ogden, and it was reported that Ogden beat Cynical in the weeks before his death. So Joe Ogden was just an abusive asshole.
Yeah.
And was about 15 years older than Artemis and about 11 years older than Cynical. So it seems like his type.
That does.
And his MO, leaving him naked. And he also cut a tattoo off of Cynical to hide his identity.
Oh, shit.
So he was real concerned with people finding out who this man was. Same as Artemis.
Yeah.
That,
God.
Yeah. Perhaps he was controlling both boys in some way. So maybe Joe Simpson knew information, but he was being controlled, and so that's why he felt guilty and was sending his mother those letters because he felt bad. What makes the most sense to me is Artemis left Birmingham with Simpson and Joseph Ogden, or Donald Kelso, however you want to call him.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe the 2 hitchhiking boys met Ogden on the way and they became friendly. It started off innocent enough, but Joseph Ogden had plans. Joseph Ogden was known for having a history of homosexuality and apparently liked younger men. I think Joe Ogden was the one who paid for the funeral and the flowers, and he wrote Love Forever Louise to throw off the investigation. I believe Simpson and Artemis were under his abusive control. Artemis sent this letter to Ruby while he was staying at the St. Regis Hotel. Quote, I think that fellow I told you about was going to open a business and give me half interest in it. Has definitely made up his mind to open in the spring. He's about the best friend I have. He has a big Cadillac. We're going to Excelsior Springs in a week, the next week in it. End quote. So the fellow that he talks about could have been Ogden, because it sounds to me like a too good to be true scenario from an abuser trying to get somebody
Just
to trust him.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the next person involved, Simpson. Simpson said that he and Artemis parted ways before they reached Kansas City, which may be true, but I don't really believe that. I think that Ogden was still controlling him, possibly with blackmail because he was a gay man. I think that Ogden made Simpson write the letters to Ruby because Simpson was the closest to the Ogletree family, and he would have known very well how Artemis would have written. So maybe Simpson wrote the letters purposely to sound different than Artemis to try to tip off Ruby.
to say, hey, something's up.
Something is off. I don't know. I can't say it outright because I'm under this dude's abusive control, but
Yeah.
something's wrong. The first letter came in early 1935 from Chicago. The next came from New York in May of 35. Simpson was scared of Ogden as well, and so he did what he was told. The police cleared Simpson, so I don't believe he's the one that actually cleared Artemis, although, the police clearing him doesn't mean a whole lot when they're corrupt, but
No, it doesn't.
he was terrified to come clean with what he knew, and he could have been the one leaving the hotel at 4 a.m. because he couldn't sleep.
Yeah, that could have been him.
And then possibly person number 4 involved, a female who was in the room, heard by Gene Owen shouting along with the male voice. And it could have been the call girl who went up to the 9th floor with the unidentified male who maybe was Simpson, and then she left shortly before him. So my theory, I'm finally down to, after spitting out all of that information, this is what I think actually happened.
Spread some truth here. Let's do this.
Artemis, Dunn, and Simpson and the call girl were all in the room at one point. Things may have started out as a sexual encounter, but then it began to get violent and the call girl leaves. Maybe she was just there to lure somebody or start the trap, basically.
Right.
It becomes more violent. Simpson is scared and he's already seen too much, so he leaves. Shortly after 4 a.m. And that's when both of them were seen leaving by the elevator guy.
Yeah.
Don continues to strangle, stab, and crush Artemis's skull and was still in the dark room when bellboy Harold Pike went into the room the first time. After that, he realizes he might get found the next time some bellboy opens the door, so he swaps his bloody clothes with the clothes Artemis checked into the hotel with so that he could leave without anybody seeing the bloody clothes.
Right.
More than likely, the hotel president had trash chutes in each room because it was a huge luxury hotel. He could have just thrown the bloody clothes down a trash chute or wrapped them in his overcoat, in Artemis's overcoat. Ogden pays for the funeral and roses because on some level he did love him and feels remorse, but he says it's for his sister to throw off the investigation. Then Ogden and Simpson moved to Chicago, where Simpson writes some letters to Ruby, then goes to New York, writes her again. Then the pair move to Memphis, where Simpson makes the phone call to Ruby. Then they go back to New York Ogden goes back to New York where he kills Cynical and tries to send the body to Simpson, who is still in Memphis.
Right. But then he gets caught.
Yes. And now Simpson is finally free
To live his life.
And
then he goes and has a talk with the mom.
Yes. And he still doesn't come clean for some reason. But
Probably because he's afraid. He was probably afraid of Ogden coming out, getting out of jail and knowing, hey, you ratted on me, or any compatriots of his.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably was a man of influence, right? So, or some kind of influence, and friends. That sounds very reasonable, very more logical than my super theory.
I just, that I don't remember what it's called, but the theory that it's usually the easiest, what is it called? The easiest explanation is usually do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to say. It's like the easiest explanation is usually the one that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was trying to go with that and like line up how people were leaving the hotel and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, we'll never know.
Well, no. Unless
That person who called the library guy calls back.
or we create a time machine, go back ourselves, or
Yeah.
we go and we do a ghost investigation at the grave site.
Okay, I was going to say, I looked up the hotel room and it does not exist anymore because I wanted to stay there and do a seance.
Is the building just gone?
The building's still there, but they remodeled. So when I called the,
Is it a hotel now?
yeah, it's still a hotel.
Still a hotel.
And it's called the Hilton President now. But they remodeled, I don't remember when, in like 2007 or something, and it changed the whole layout. And so room 1046 does not exist anymore.
But do we know what room or rooms would have? We'd have to see if we can find the layouts, the blueprints, and figure it out. Because that would be awesome if, like, we just rented the room or a room or two and did an investigation in that area.
Yeah.
And probably, like, this is where the bed would have been, or the trash chute, or whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe they will answer this. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I personally think that when it comes to getting the answers from certain horrifically tragic events, you could probably find a way to get the answers from them. Sadly, there were not too many clues in this one for us to be able to find it. We had to come up with all these theories and try and find a time frame, a timeline of events.
Mm-hmm.
You try to come up with the history on this.
Yeah.
And I think you did a really good job with that last one.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can get lucky and actually from personal experience, but also from the experience of like reading online and following paranormal things. Because I'm a huge paranormal individual myself too, and I've actually caught EVPs in the past too, which was really awesome, and I wish I still had them, but it was so cool. But I think it'd be really cool to actually eventually go down and see what we can find.
Yeah.
What we can get. That would be really, really cool.
I do want to visit the grave as well. So we should totally do that.
It's for no other reason to give respect.
Yeah.
Basically, because this is a story.
Tragic.
Not only tragic, but historic and quite the true crime predecessor. Like, not predecessor, but it's like, this is a real crime that like has no resolution.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm surprised that aside from you telling me about this, there's only one other place that I've heard about it, and that was online. But it was you don't. I haven't heard about it from any of the true crime shows or anything else like that. This sounds like it would be. If I didn't know about it before you coming to me, I probably would have thought you were reading me like a script from a film or something.
It sounds too crazy to be true.
It really does. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a blast.
So what are your thoughts? Email us to let us know what your theories are, or message me at the Facebook page. Facebook is History and Mystery in Kansas City, or the email is and mysterykcpod@gmail.com, because I would really love to know everyone else's theories and what do you think of our theories. And yeah. But I know this was a long one. Sorry about that. There was just so much to get through and still so much I could keep talking about. But
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those stories where it can go on forever.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that, me personally, I'd be like, oh, well, this. So yeah. Okay, let's continue.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I will post all of my references on the Facebook group. So go check all of those out so you can get your own opinion about everything. And I think that'll do it.
Yeah.
So until next time, stay aware, alert, and alive. Bye.
Please.